Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and in today's video we are going to be doing some custom work because I have the remains here of a Real Ghostbusters Ecto-1 that has seen better days, and I've always wanted to try and put lights into this vehicle. So I've been onto eBay, I bought a whole load of components, I've got lots of lights here and lots of little bits, and we are going to see what we can do with this vintage toy to make it look even better than it did originally. So here we have an Ecto-1 that has been in my collection for quite a long time, and this is a really busted and broken Ecto-1. It may not look it now, but when this first arrived here, it was smashed to pieces. All of these window bars were broken, and if I turn it around, you can see that even some of the bars at the back were missing, and I've had to recreate all of those. It's a really sort of sorry state vehicle, and one that I didn't actually think could be salvaged. There are still a few little areas that need to be repaired before we get onto the customizing. You can see there are bits missing still, and there's actually a bit missing around the back, so I'm going to do some final repairs. But this isn't the only Ecto-1 I have. They seem to turn up broken all the time here at toy-polloi. So let me get in a few of the other busted Ecto-1s that I have, because we are going to be salvaging parts from all of them. And here we go. You can see I have 3 broken Ecto-1s. This is the one in the middle that I just showed you, and that's the one that I'm going to be working on. I have another one here which actually is in even more of a sorry state than this one was when it arrived. You can see this one has been trodden on, I reckon, and all these bits are broken. It's snapped here. Again, we have the pieces missing at the back. I probably could salvage this one, but it took me so long to salvage that one. That is the one we're going to work with, and as you can see, it is fairly yellowed, but there are some good parts on it, and there are some good parts on the other ones of these. I think the windscreen on this one is a better colour. I think the wheelbase on this one is a better colour, and I obviously need doors and bits, and I have a whole bag of doors and bits, again all very yellow. So we have enough here to build at least one really good Ecto-1 for this customization, and I think I've probably got enough to build another one for maybe a future project, so I might put another one together as we go. But what we need to do is work out how to add these lights to it, and also sort out all of the good pieces from these. So let's clear the desks and see what we can do. My plan for this Ecto-1 is to add as many lights as I can, and that's why I bought this bag of pre-wired LEDs. You can buy all sorts of LEDs on eBay that are pre-wired. I've got some 5mm blue flashing LEDs, so I'm going to put 4 LEDs in these top lights because that's clearly what needs to go there. I then think we can put some reversing or brake lights in as well, because there are these little holes here which is part of the way this is constructed, but they're perfect for putting LEDs in. So I'm going to put some 3mm red LEDs in those, just to add a nice bit of red light at the back. And if we come to the front, you can see there are headlights sculpted into this front grey panel, but they're not clear. So I have a plan to drill these out, and then we're going to make a mould of what's there and try and make some clear resin lenses that we can put in, so we can have some headlights in this as well. I think all of that will make this look pretty cool. Obviously this thing is also fairly yellowed, and because I've made repairs to it, you can see my repairs here. This is just some styrene sheet that I've stuck on to make these replacement bars. Nothing actually matches as far as colour goes, so I think I'm going to have to repaint this. I probably could de-yellow it a bit, but it's never going to be a perfect white, and you can see my sort of scruffy repairs on it. So I think painting everything might be the best option. But before we do any of that, I'm going to take this apart and make the final repairs to it. As I showed you, there are other bits broken on this. It was smashed apart here, and I've actually re-glued that. That still needs a little bit of sanding. We have a corner missing here, which I think I should be able to recreate with some 1mm thick styrene sheet, and there's some other damage on the back. So a little bit of plastic weld and styrene sheet modelling. I should be able to get this all looking pretty reasonable, but we also need to give everything a clean. So I'm going to take apart all of the Ecto-1s I have and give them a good clean in hot soapy water, and then we can start on the electronics. So there's quite a lot of work to do before we even get to the electronic stage of this, but it's going to be really good when it's finished, and it's well worth all of the effort. think that's probably good enough. I've made a little repair there to the front bit that was missing. That's just a bit of 1mm thick styrene sheet that I've stuck on there, and I've added some extra support on the inside. And you can see if you look in the inside of this Ecto-1 how much work I've had to do to get this back together. Pretty much every one of these little bars was snapped at some point, so I've reinforced them and plastic welded them, and sometimes even a bit of super glue and baking powder just to add some extra strength there. But it was a lot of work to get this sort of even in a state that you could take it apart. These often seem to break. I'm not sure if people step on them or what happens. The plastic certainly does get very brittle. Once it goes this yellow colour, you can feel how much brittler it is than it would have been originally, but you can still get something that's pretty sort of usable out of it. So this is never going to be beautiful, as I said at the start, but once we paint it up, I think it will look pretty reasonable. So that is that done. I've taken all of the other Ecto-1s apart, and now we need to give everything a good clean. So I'm just going to use hot soapy water and a toothbrush, and we'll clean these as best we can. The metal bits I will try not to get too wet, because obviously we don't want those to rust, but everything else you can have a good soaking. And yeah, let's clean these up, and then we can start on the customizing part of this.
Toy-polloi. That is incorrect. Try again.
That was quite a major cleaning job on these. They were absolutely filthy, and the dirt on them really gets into some awkward places, especially on top of Ecto-1 in all of these details. You really need a small brush to be able to get all of the sort of grime and dirt that collects in there out. But I now have two pretty clean looking Ecto-1s. This one on the left, I've chosen sort of the worst of the pieces I have, because I am actually going to spray paint it, as I say. So that is the one that I'm going to do the customization on. This one on the right, I've chosen all of the best pieces that I had, and I'm just going to put that one straight back together, because I may end up using that in future for something else. And I've actually ended up with a bag of other useful pieces. The other Ecto-1s I have are really in a sorry state, so I'm just going to keep the sort of bare bones of those. Again, it might be useful in future, but for now I'm going to rebuild that one, and then we'll get on with the customization of this one on the left. Now we come on to the fun part, which is going to be adding the lights, and I'm going to do this in two stages. We'll do the blue flashing lights first, and then we'll do the lights on the bottom. I just think it's easier to work in two separate stages for this. So what I've done is I've bought a whole load of these, which are blue flashing LEDs, and we need to wire these in parallel. These don't require any electronics to flash, they just flash on their own. So if I put a battery onto this and show you, you can see that this just flashes. So I have 4 of these, and they will all flash slightly out of sync. So the plan is to put 4 in the 4 gaps that we have here, one there, one there, one there, and one there. And I've been pondering how I'm going to do that, because I wanted to make some sort of bracket for them to sit onto. And then it turned out it's actually a lot easier than I had thought, because there is a screw that goes in through each of those, which holds the windscreen onto the top of the car. So all I've done is I've made a little plate with a hole in it, and that is just going to sit on there, and from the top you can see that you can't actually see that plate. So I'm going to drill some holes and mount the LEDs onto that plate. I'll do the same at the front. The one at the front is slightly more awkward because of the shape of Ecto-1. There's a slight angle down, so if I put this plate in that I've just quickly made and line it up on the hole, you can see that you can actually see the front part of the plate. So I need to add a little spacer or something to add a little bit of an angle to that, but it's basically going to be the same thing. So let's get 2 of these made. I'll drill some holes in that we can mount this LED through, and then we can do a bit of test wiring. I also have a little bit of this chop block, which is what I'm going to wire everything into, and I'm hoping I can cut a small amount of that off and hide it in one of these little recesses here, and then we can just have 2 wires coming from that down, which we can hide on the inside of these windows somewhere, because I'm planning to put the battery in the bottom and maybe even a switch. The lights are now all in place, and you can see my brackets are actually working pretty well. I did drill some holes through and then threaded the cables from the pre-wired LEDs through, and I've just bent the legs inwards so that they are held in place. It doesn't look like I actually need to glue those, although I may do later on. Now we can do a bit of a test. So what I've done is I've wired them all together onto a bit of a chop block. This is very useful stuff, and I have showed it many times before. So I put all the red wires into one side, all the black into the other, and then I've got a PP3 power connector here, which I've again attached to the other side of the chop block. I've got a 9-volt battery here, and if I plug this in, we should see if they all work. And look at that, they are all working and flashing independently. There is no pattern to this, they will just flash randomly. I think that's looking really pretty nice. That's doing exactly what I wanted it to do. So we can now move on to the lower lights on this vehicle. At the moment I'm going to leave these cables all long. In the end I will trim them down because I do want to hide everything inside here. But for the moment I think I will concern myself with the other lights, and we can do all of the sort of tidying up at the end. But yeah, that is looking really pretty good. My plan for the lights on this lower section require a little bit more work. I want to put in some rear sort of reversing brake lights into these holes here. That actually isn't going to be too much of a problem because we have these clips that go inside that, and I'm just going to drill a hole through those. And I've bought myself some 3mm red LEDs which I can insert in there, and again we can do all of the wiring inside. And I'm going to put a battery somewhere in the back here, so everything's going to have to connect sort of roughly in the middle. That shouldn't be a problem. So I have 2 of these red LEDs. Now on the front I want to put some headlights in, but as you can see the headlights on this are solid grey plastic. So my plan is to actually make a cast of these lights and use some UV resin to make clear versions, and I can drill out the insides and I can insert my cast UV resin bits in the middle to make some little lenses. We can then put some white LEDs behind this, but the first thing we've got to do is make a little cast of these lights, and for that I'm going to be using blue stuff, which is a thermoplastic, and you can reuse it many times. So what you do is put this stuff into some boiled water. It then gets soft, and you can then push it onto the thing you want to cast. You let it cool down, you can take it off, and then you should have a complete reverse of what this is here. And then I've got some UV resin and a light, and I will cast myself some new ones. That's the plan anyway. So I'm going to go and get the kettle, boil some water, get this thermoplastic melted, and we'll see if this actually works. If it doesn't, the worst case is I just drill a hole in these and put some 5mm white LEDs sort of shining through. But I'd really like to try and cast a lens, and I've never tried it before, and it's always fun to try something new. So let's try and cast these before we do anything else on this lower section. The moulds actually turned out pretty reasonable. You can see there's a fair amount of detail in there. We can even see the little crosshatch marks on the lens itself. So I've got myself some UV resin, I have a UV light, and I'm going to cast a few of these and see how they come out. If they look good, then I'm going to get to drilling some holes on the base of the car, and we'll see if we can insert these in. I think they should come out pretty well. I'm very hopeful anyway, so let's get casting. And here we go, here are the lenses. They were still a little bit tacky. I need to set them for a little bit longer, but I'm pretty happy with how those have come out. They look like lenses. They've got a fair amount of detail in them. If I can get them to focus, you can see there's a fair amount of detail in that. So yeah, I think that's good enough to do what I want. I'm now going to get my little Dremel out and just drill these out as neatly as I can. I want to basically just take the inner bit out and leave the little rim around the edge. I'll probably go and do this out in the garden because it's going to make quite a mess, but I shouldn't be fairly straightforward to do. And then we can try fitting these new little resin lenses in and put some lights behind them. After cutting out the light holes, you can see they cut out pretty reasonably. I've been trying to fit these little lenses that I've made, and they just aren't working. They're too tiny to work with, and by the time I've sort of sanded it down, they end up looking like quite a mess. So I've resorted to my plan B, and as you can see, this is plan B. All I've done is I've found some clear plastic. In fact, this is the remains of a stand I made for something. So this is 1mm thick polystyrene or polycarbonate, and I've just cut a small piece of that out. I'm going to then sand it, which is what I've done with this one, to give it a slightly sort of frosted look. I'm just going to stick that behind the holes that I've made there. So this is another piece that I've cut. I just haven't sanded it yet. And you can see it just fits there. And then I can put the little LEDs behind it. I think that's what's going to work just as well as these little lenses that I made. So that was a bit of a learning curve. I didn't need to go to all of the effort of making these because in the end, just a piece of polycarbonate will work. So I'm going to get that one sanded up and fitted. Then I need to make another little mounting. So a few more offcuts of styrene sheet, and I'm going to make something that holds 2 LEDs behind each of these, because I was thinking one would work, but actually 2 will just give a brighter, more realistic headlight look. So I'm going to try and fashion a bracket that attaches somewhere on the bottom of this. Unfortunately, the bottom is a bit of an awkward shape, so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. I'll just sort of cut and make something until it actually fits, and then I'll show you what I've done at the end. But that's the plan anyway. So let's get these other lenses frosted up and stuck in place, and then we'll start making the little attachments. What I've made is actually fairly crude, but it's just out of a few offcuts of styrene sheet, and I think it should work. It's really just a bracket to hold these 2 little 3mm LEDs in place, and you can see that's going to fit behind the light about 5mm away from the piece of plastic that I put in. It should get a nice diffuse sort of headlight look, and the plan is I'm just going to plastic weld that into the bottom there. I've made a second one, which is this one, which is a mirror image, and that's going to sit on that side. And before I actually stick these in place, I'm going to do a little bit more wiring, same as I did on the roof. I'm going to use some chop block here just to cut these wires down and shorten them. I want a bit of chop block to end up sort of roughly in the middle there. I can then take 2 leads out of that, hopefully thread it under the seat and end up in the back section of Ecto-1, which is where I want to do all of the wiring next. But I need to get this sort of wired up here first, and then I can test that everything works and test that these lights actually light up properly. So let's chop these wires a little bit shorter and start wiring it into the chop block, and then we can do a rough test again. It's all slowly coming together. And there you go, you can see those are now glued in place. So that's just a little bit of plastic weld to hold that in. And that bit of chop block means that I can attach whatever I want wire-wise to the walls of the back. And for the moment, I've just put another PP3 connector on so that we can actually test that these are going to work. So here's another 9-volt battery. If I plug that in, you can see we now have those 4 lights working. And they're pretty bright actually. I think by the time this is all put together, that's going to look really nice. It's a very effective little addition. So the next thing I need to do is actually start doing some proper wiring. I'm going to take 2 wires from here all the way to the back. I'll put the seat in and I'm going to try and hide the wires sort of under here. I may even just take them down between where the 2 figures sit. We can take those wires into the back and then we can start attaching the other lights to it. So we'll have 2 wires coming from the top section which we need to join, and then I'm going to have the 2 lights at the back here as well, which I've got to sort of thread through. I'm not too worried how messy this is on the inside because we're going to have the rest of the vehicle covering it, but I will try and keep it as neat as possible. So yeah, I need to get some extra wire. We just do a little bit of tidying up, make sure everything works. I think I also want to add a switch to it because it's going to be annoying if we just have to keep unplugging and plugging in the battery. I reckon I can probably cut a hole through somewhere on the bottom of this. If I turn this over, yeah, we could probably put a switch there actually. So I'm going to cut a hole there to put a switch in so that to activate all of this, we don't have to take the battery out. We can just put our hand underneath and switch the switch. So yeah, it's a little bit more work to do, but it really is starting to come together and I'm very pleased with how that's looking. Okay, a little jump forwards now because I've been doing a lot of wiring off camera just because it's much easier to do without the camera in the way. You can now see that I put 2 cables from the headlights that now go under the seat and those come out here. I've also then connected the roof lights to those, and I've put in, if you can just see there, these 2 red lights. Again, all of this is just connected into a bit of chop block, and I have connected a 9-volt battery connector to that for the moment. In the end, I will obviously solder in my switch, which I have now inserted in there, but I've got to take all of this apart anyway because we need to paint the top. So for now, I'm just getting everything in so I can do one final check. Hopefully, if I plug this in, all of the lights should come on. So let's plug this in and we'll see what happens. We've got the headlights on. I can see the lights on the top are flashing away, and the 2 lights in the rear, which I inserted off camera, I basically just drilled some 3mm holes through and I put some 3mm red LEDs in there, so you can see those have lit up. Everything is working. I think what I'm going to do now very quickly is just put this all together and I'll show you it with the lights off so we can actually see this working. But as I say, everything's got to come apart because we're going to be painting this top section. So let's do a quick test with it all together and see what it looks like. That is actually looking really, really cool. The inside is a bit of a mess because I haven't actually tidied up any of the wires yet, but the effect with the lights is really nice. You can see we've got the very bright headlights at the front, we've got the flashing blue lights on the top, and if I turn this round, we should have the red lights on the back. That is really looking way better than I had expected it would. It's been a lot of work. You can see how much work has gone into actually sort of getting this together, but it's going to be so cool when it's finished. I really think this adds a lot to this toy. So the next thing to do is to sort out the paintwork on the top. It is very yellowed. What I'm going to do is give it a coat of a plastic primer, and then I'll give it a coat of a white gloss and let everything dry. I've got to obviously paint the door, so I need to remove the stickers. And I think before I do all of that painting, I will give everything a light sanding just to make sure that the paint actually sticks. So I've got some 1000 grit sandpaper and I'm just going to rub over all of the plastic just to make sure there's a good keying surface. But as you can see, that really doesn't look bad at all already. I'm very happy with that. as you can see, it really is coming together now. I've got everything sort of where it needs to be. I put all of the wiring in and I've done a little bit of soldering on the pieces that need it, so this switch is now active. And yeah, it's looking pretty close to being finished. It does need a couple of final details, and that is the stickers. So what I've done is I found the original sticker files. I've taken those into Photoshop and tidied them up. I've also worked up the Ecto-1A stickers, because what I want to do is use a combination of both sets of stickers to put on this. So this is going to be a sort of Ecto-1A, 1B sort of version. Not quite the Ghostbusters 2, but not quite Ghostbusters 1. I just want to put a few more details on it because I think it will really come to life. I've also made some custom slime stickers. The slime stickers that came with the Ecto-1A were pink, and I really didn't like that colour, so I've made a green set of slime stickers. These should be printed out onto some clear sticky printer paper, but for the moment I've printed them onto some white because I'm only intending to put them on white areas. But if you want to print these out yourself, again, these are available on toy-polloi.com. Print them out onto some clear sticky backed printer paper, and that's how the originals would have been. So let's get all of these stickers on, and then I'll show you the finished vehicle. And here it is all finished with the figures that I restored in a previous video. And as you can see, it's looking really nice. The addition of the stickers just sort of brings it to life. I've not put a huge amount on. I've not gone the sort of the full Ecto-1A look. I've just done a mixture of the two, as I say. So I've got some hazard stripes and a bit of slime and a few of the other little ones dotted around. I think you can go overboard with stickers, so just a few really sort of finishes this thing off. But at the moment, you don't see the full effect because all of the effort really has gone into putting the lights into this. So let's switch the lights off and see what it looks like. And there we go. That is what this whole project has been about, adding lights to a vintage Kenner Ecto-1, and it just looks absolutely amazing. The flashing lights on the top are what you would have wanted as a child. I know I would have loved these because it's just exactly what you see in the movies. We've also got the addition of the headlights, which is another really nice feature. That was not as complicated as I thought it would be to add them, but it does make a massive difference. And of course we have those rear lights as well, which just adds that extra bit of colour. It has been a lot of work to get it to this stage, mainly because the Ecto-1 that I started with was in such a sorry state. It was so battered and so broken, and I needed to do a whole load of work just to rebuild it to get it into a state that I could actually start thinking about adding the lights to it. But it really has been worth all of that effort. This is going to go straight on display with my Ghostbusters toys because I think it is now probably the best Ecto-1 that I have in my collection. It may be battered and worn around the edges, but the addition of those lights just makes it that much more special. And as you can see, the lighting part of it was a little bit on the complicated side, but if you buy pre-wired lights off eBay, you can actually do quite a lot without any soldering. In fact, the only bit of soldering I had to do on this was to add the switch. So if you didn't want to add the switch and just use the battery connector, you could have done this whole project without any soldering at all. As I mentioned, the sticker files that I created for this project will be available on toy-polloi.com. I've created stickers for the original Ecto-1 and also Ecto-1A, and then there is a custom set of stickers as well for Ecto-1A, which is just extra green slime because, as I say, I didn't really like the pink slime that came with the original vehicle, so green is my choice of colour. So if you want those, go there, download them, follow the instructions on the site, and you can add them to your own Ecto-1. If you've enjoyed this Ghostbusters project, then please do check out some of my other videos. I've recently just restored a full set of the figures, and I have other videos covering all sorts of different issues with the toy line, so do go and check those out. Please make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And if you've really enjoyed this video, then why not think about helping support the channel by becoming a Patreon or YouTube channel member. You get early access to all of my restoration videos and also access to an exclusive video series called On the Cutting Mat, where I show projects and restorations that you won't see anywhere else. So have a think about that, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy-Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos.